Vocabulary games and activities in a primary classroom. My name is Tatiana Shelepko. I'm Cambridge ELT consultant. This is the agenda for today. Quite a busy webinar. So we will talk about main stages in teaching vocabulary. We will look at some vocabulary teaching tips, some games and activities, and see what's new. At once, I would like to suggest you a bonus for this webinar. So while you're watching, you can make a screenshot of your favorite activity, the one you really liked, screenshot and post it on your social media and tag us, Cambridge English Ukraine page. We will only see you if you really tag us. To do that, you use this sign and then Cambridge English Ukraine. And if you do that, we will be happy to send you the PDF of today's webinar. And this is the bonus for this webinar. And I do hope that you will really make a screenshot of your favorite activity. Yeah, this is what our Facebook page looks like. There is a flag here, and so you don't confuse it with anything else. And I will remind you about that at the end of the webinar, but you won't be able to make a screenshot of your favorite activity, so do that now. I mean, do that when you like something. So, the first thing we will talk about is main stages in teaching vocabulary. I'm pretty sure that I've been showing these triangles before, and you all remember about presentation, practice, production, idea, which I'm not a big fan of. This is the idea coming from 70s, 80s, and we are now talking more about discovery, consolidation, and use. So what is the difference? We, instead of presenting new vocabulary, we let students discover new vocabulary, make their own assumptions, notice the language, notice the spelling, see how it works. Instead of practice, well, there is nothing instead of practice. Practice it should be there all the time. We call it consolidation in the very early stages of learning, but actually it's practice, and this is something that we will look at today mostly. And instead of production, we put here use, because you discover something, you practice it, and then you can use it. We don't produce the language because it rather seems to be reproduced. Sorry. So we don't need to do this reproduction of the language. Okay. And let's look at the main stages. I have here acquisition of the new vocabulary, then visuals and realia. Then we are working on the form of the new vocabulary. After that, pronunciation, and then revision, recycling, and this is the most important thing, to revise, to recycle all the time, not to expect that students are introduced with new vocabulary and then they have to learn it somehow, right? To make it work, we practice vocabulary all the time, throughout all the lessons. All the warm-up activities, all the lead-in activities should recycle the material all the time. So what would you add here? Any other stages that you use at your lessons? Let's see in the chat. Hello. Hello. What would you add to this? We have listening. Okay. Games. Okay. Association games. All right. Practice. Okay, songs, games. Okay, thank you very much. So, if on this slide, where do we put games? On which stage do we put games? Use can be, also can be acquisition, also can be visualization, right? So everything goes along with it. I don't think we will have to stop on this on these stages for a long time, because there is a wonderful article that you can use that you can read on our Linguist UA website, and if you are interested, I will include this article to the follow-up materials after this webinar. But yeah, these are the main stages. On the moment of acquisition, which I have here the first, it is very important to work on the meaning, to create the concept so students can understand, differentiate the words. And on the with the moment of visuals and realia, it actually comes along into acquisition and also can go along with the form, pronunciation, and revision point. But visuals and realia are more like an instrument to personalize the language, to recognize the language. But when we're talking about acquisition, here we have listening, here we have reading, here we have making the word our own, which is also writing and reading at this point. So acquisition, instead of learn the new word, acquire the new word, make it your word, make it old word, right, the one you use. And why we need why do we need to teach students this concept? Yeah, because if they know how to spell the word, if they know how to pronounce the word, how to define it in the language, and how to say it, it's great. But they need to understand the context. For example, what is the difference between small and tiny? You can type that in a chat. What is the difference between small and tiny? Okay, yeah, right. Tiny is very small, too small. Any other difference? For example, in grammar. Well, definitely in spelling and pronunciation, but what's with the grammar? Yeah, it has different meaning for sure. Nothing. Which one can we make comparative? Smaller, right. Can we have tinier? Not really. Right? Okay. So there are not only meaning differences, because small, very small can be there, but also tiny has this emotional thing. For example, oh, sorry, I used to, oh, okay, excuse me. For example, if we have small and we can add little, what is the difference between little and small? Also very interesting difference, right? And we can make it visual for students. For example, a mouse is small, right? But if it is next to the elephant, yeah, it's small. If it's next to me, it's small. But if I put a mouse and a bee together, a bee would be tiny compared to mouse, right? So a mouse can be small, can be little, can be tiny, but it's different in every context. And you can ask students to make sentences in which situation a mouse will be tiny, small, and little, and in which situation it can be big, right? And this is how we build up to students who will be able to think critically, to analyze properly, and to feel this difference in the languages by making students acquire the language rather than learn how it's written, how it's spelled, how it's pronounced before we go to the meaning. So meaning would be there very important. Also, we need to understand why we are teaching. Why are we teaching vocabulary? We are teaching vocabulary for several reasons. And of course, we want students to know all the words perfectly. And I have a hint for you. So, why do we teach vocabulary? To speak, to communicate. That's true, of course. It would be impossible. Oh, somebody wrote 4 skills. That's actually the hint I have here. So, yeah, we need to decide for the lesson, why do we teach this specific vocabulary, this specific target language or not target language? Because we might need to pre-teach some vocabulary before some tasks if there are new words. And we need to know this is both for young learners, for adults, for teenagers, but this is the idea for teacher. On the first lesson, I teach this vocabulary for students to be able to read, to be able to write, or to be able to recognize when listening. And it's not very important to produce this word at this lesson. Or am I teaching this word to read? So they recognize it in reading, but they don't have to produce it at this particular lesson. And then I can change this aim later. Yeah, so it can be different for each lesson, and we need to think. Okay, so how to demand this thing that uh, students have to learn the word. We've been reading this on the previous lesson. You had to learn this word. Well, students can learn to read this word, to recognize it in the text, but not necessarily to produce. Yeah. So before you teach new vocabulary, think for yourself. What is the aim for this particular lesson? Um, okay. Uh-huh. Um, right, and before we go with to speak, to write, to listen, or to read, we are trying to predict the expected result. Like, do students need to produce this language, or do students need to um, recognize this language either from listening or from reading? So that's an important thing for teacher. Okay, moving on. Before we jump into the next stage of our webinar, I will just look through the chat. So I've seen someone saying tiny, tinier, the tiniest in the Oxford Dictionary. Yes, this is grammatically correct, but this is not so common. And if we are talking about young learners, we try to teach this difference on some regular examples, common examples. Later on, of course, they will build up and they will see that everything is possible. Half of the language is the exception from the rules, but at the beginning, it's better to to teach them in a simpler way. Okay. Uh-huh. It's fine. And someone says, give examples how to teach in the kindergarten. This webinar's topic is primary classroom. Kindergarten, we are not, I don't have this topic right now, like at this particular webinar. And follow our next webinars to see, just maybe we will have this topic. All right, so vocabulary teaching tips. Before uh, before we go, I will just remind you that if you post the screenshot, we will send you the PDF of this webinar. Moving on. So first tip, move from concrete to abstract. I believe that you noticed that all the books, all the Cambridge courses start with the topic in the classroom or classroom objects or classroom language or at school. Why? This is important because this is actually starting from something very concrete, from here and now. This is the safest way to start learning new vocabulary because classroom object is the topic that you see around you. A rubber, a ruler, a pen, a pencil, a notebook. You can see it, you can touch it. It's the most concrete thing in the classroom conditions. That's why this topic is always the first. It's not just because, it's historically happened so, but because it's psychologically the safest way for students to be here and now. And then we usually move to the family and then back to here and now to the body, parts of the body, clothes. Yeah, something that can relate to immediately without metacognition, metacognitive skills, and so on. So they don't need to imagine to start learning the language. And this is a very natural way. This is how every native language is being learned by all of us. And yeah, that's why we always start from the concrete and later we move to the abstract. Abstract, this is something that is harder to illustrate. These are feelings, emotions, descriptions, ideas, and there is more grammar into these abstract things. It is much more difficult to just name them and learn them separately from the context. Still, everything should be learned in the context, of course. So, here is the task for you. Type in the chat what is the first thing you teach when you teach new vocabulary. The very first thing when you teach new word. Pronunciation, picture. Okay, drill, definition, pronunciation, critical thinking when teaching vocabulary. It would be interesting to see how it's done. Picture, picture, pronunciation, spelling, reading, pronunciation, TPR, picture, flashcards. Okay. Everybody who wrote visuals, pictures, flashcards, and definition, I wouldn't say definition, but real things, realia, yes, this is the best way. Let's see. One more task. I will explain later why. But one more, think of a tree right now. What at this webinar, just you don't have to write anything, just think of a tree. Just think of a tree. This is your task. Okay, I believe everybody thought about a tree. Now, what exactly was happening in your mind, in your head, when you read task 2? Think of a tree. What was the process in your mind? Trees around you, picture of a tree, visual aspect. Imagine, imagination. Picture, drawing, picture, imagination. Remember this tree you saw recently. A bird. Wow. A picture, an image, right? First of all, you think about an image. And most probably it's some very specific tree. Okay. It's always visual, mostly visual, but also some students might think of the sound of leaves. Some students can recall the touch of leaves or the touch of the tree itself, of the branches. Some students will imagine a tree in winter, in summer, in windy weather, with leaves, without leaves, yellow, green, pine trees, apple trees, hundreds of other trees in different contexts. And very rarely we imagine just a tree without a context. It's very real, right? So we can easily imagine. Of course, if I asked you to imagine, to think of phenomenon, you would be, yeah, everybody would be imagining something very different. Or think of love, also very will be very different. Someone will connect it to a person, someone. So tree is very specific, and it will be different for everyone. But what is important, in which language did you think of this tree? That's interesting. Are you sure you were actually using any language, right? Somebody says it was a picture. Exactly. It was the meaning. You you took the meaning from the word that is written on the slide. You took the meaning, you see the word tree, I don't know, this one, uh, and immediately you go to the concept in your head, and then you specify it there, and then you can describe what exactly you imagine. But there is no language to understanding the notion of a word. So, uh, if you if you remember the first task, what is the first thing you teach about the new word, right? uh I have here trees, yeah. And what is the first thing you think when you hear tree? The form of the tree here or the meaning? So that would be definitely meaning. First thing our brain reacts to is the form, but we derive meaning right away. So first thing we teach about any new word is the meaning. Uh, and what does it mean? That we need to make sure that students really understand what this is before they learn how it's written, before they learn how to read it properly, before they can say it properly. We need to know that they know the meaning. Only then we work on the um, form of the word. And usually, first it's spoken and then it's written. Now, uh, uh, I mean, it's not the order of the lesson, of course. It's the, how to say it, the importance, right? So the most important thing would be meaning. If they pronounce it in the wrong way, it would be easier to correct this than if they don't understand what they're talking about or listening to or reading about. Okay, now recycling. I recently started dancing, came back to dancing, and I was doing that as a child, and then I had a huge pause, and now I came back to this, and of course I cannot do the same thing as this lady. And we can compare it to the language as well, right? So when you use the language, you when you practice the language, and everybody knows it, but sometimes we forget that we are teaching students from scratch. We are teaching new vocabulary from scratch. We know it in a bigger scale, like if you want to do something you have to practice every day, but is that a case for our lessons, right? We need to check ourselves. Do we really recycle every lesson, or we expect that students, yesterday we learned 8 new words, so today they will be able to repeat them, and then in a week they will be able to repeat them because we learned it last week, right? Or the students of the first grade, when they come back to after summer holidays to the second grade, we're like, come on, we've been teaching you the whole year, and you have to know all these words, right? This is what we sometimes expect, but it is wrong to do that, because right, look, this is me. I look like a boy. This is me walking, but before that happened, there was a long process of crawling before walking. And to get to dancing, there was walking in my different way, making very different steps. And it took me like uh, 27 years to understand how else I can dance. And I'm still, I still don't know moves. And I still know only one style, for example. But I cannot know all the styles. But even in one style, I don't know all the figures and all the steps. And the same with the vocabulary. We need to understand that this is the process for each word, and not. Of course, not 27 years, but I'm still learning English. I still hear myself making mistake, correcting myself constantly, and this is fine. I'm still learning my native language, the one I've been using for over 30 years, and mm, I still learn new words, right? And to learn them properly, I need to use them in very different contexts. And the same is happening with students. So this was the second tip: recycle. And yeah, so we have new vocabulary and we have kind of old vocabulary. And how often do you practice new vocabulary and old vocabulary? We practice new vocabulary once in a lifetime because it's new only once. And then to make it our own vocabulary, we need to practice it every day. And we need to have activities for revising every day, not once a month, not learning everything and then expecting that students can pass the test, but creating very different activities so students have this ability to practice what they heard once or wrote once or read once, but practice it in various contexts, games, songs, as you wrote. Develop vocabulary learning strategies. This is a very important skill for learning vocabulary because this is lifelong learning skill, one of the 21st century important skills, life competencies. And yeah, develop learning strategies. We can have word lists, and this is something we've been doing when we were studying at school, having a vocabulary word list for different topics, or maybe in alphabetical order. And I can give you a tip. I've been always drawing each word. I had a drawing for each word next to transcription that we had to do back then, translation, definition in English, and a drawing. And it might be suitable for some students, might be not for other students, but having some proper association with a word would work. For more logical students, mind maps were working really well, making a tree, family trees for the words, making different collages like touching something. Yeah, this is for more kinesthetic intelligence students. So to learn something, they need to build it or they need to touch it. And you can have various groups of students who can make such vocabulary projects. And yeah, other techniques would be magic eyes, leap reading, and teach a friend. Magic eyes means that we have flashcards on the board, for example, 6 flashcards. And today I demonstrate new vocabulary, so I have all 6. Tomorrow, before the lesson, I take one away, and when I point at the empty place with this flashcard, everybody has to, maybe in a chorus, has to name what was there. Yeah, and by the end of the 6th day, I have no flashcards, but I just point at the orders. And then I put the same flashcards in a different order. And this activity will take you like less than maybe 1 minute. But if you do it an everyday activity before you come back to the topic, if you have like 8 lessons for one topic, you can use this activity before actual warm-up activity. And this might be helpful for your students to really drill the words together with the meanings, together with the pictures. And of course, it works with the concrete vocabulary the best. Now, lip reading looks like a game. So you just mime the word with your mouse, yeah, and students have to guess which word this is. And of course, this should be something from the topic you are working on at the moment. And teach a friend, one of the best techniques. Share your ideas about how exactly you learn new words. It could be terrible, but what I was doing, I've been always writing a word on my hand and every time looking at it before I go to sleep. Then in the morning I would wipe it away and then write another word. I don't recommend it to my students. Never do, but it helped me a lot. And my grandma was not very happy about it. Anyways, there might be sticky notes. There might be also like self-made watch. I found this thing um, instead of writing on your hand, you can actually make a paper watch. And on this paper watch, you write the new word and then you stick another one, another one. So it's a little bit arts and crafts for your students with different words. You can write down several words there, and yeah, it's like watch made of paper. There were also ideas to make a crown, to write a word for your partner, uh, for someone who sits next to you. If he forgets this word, or she forgets this word all the time, you you write it for your friend, and it's very memorable. And most probably, one day will be enough to remember this word when some of your friends is wearing this crown. Uh, so yeah, I shared a few vocabulary learning strategies, and you can encourage students to create their own vocabulary learning strategy and share it with a friend, which can also boost students' creativity, because some of them might have no strategies, and this might be helpful. Don't over focus on the spelling. This is something I started with. The spelling goes as the last stage, last we cannot say last meaningful, less meaningful. It's the same meaningful, but and the same important, but it's important for reading and writing. Yeah, it's not that important for listening and speaking. We don't have spelling there, but it is important for writing and reading. If you spell it wrong, then someone will not understand what's written, and there would be miscommunication. That's obvious, but um, spelling is not something that we start with. Form is not something that we start with. We start with the meaning, and then go to the spelling. And this works for language, right? It doesn't work for dancing, for example. But still, the thought is always the first. And someone said that it's important to create to develop critical thinking as the first thing while teaching vocabulary. Well, we don't develop critical thinking, but we do provoke thinking. We do provoke the desire to discover, to explore, to really derive the meaning, find the meaning, and the thought is always first before it comes to the action, to the movement. And yeah, even actually, even with dancing. So that's why spelling goes last. And for spelling, we use phonics, and I will show you a few other techniques. So these are letter bags, spelling gym, and spelling bee. Most probably you heard about it, and substitution game. So letter bag phonics is already in the book. If you are using Cambridge course, Cambridge materials like Kids Box or Superminds, phonics already there. What does it mean? That first we teach the most common words, and we provoke recognition uh, of the patterns. And first we go from the meaning to the pronunciation and to the spelling by noticing chunks, noticing parts, noticing patterns and rules, and discovering those rules. And then from the most commonly used words, we move to the rare words. And yeah, letter bags, what this is. So we can have the whole alphabet in a bag. It might be macaroni made of this alphabet macaroni, or it could be some plastic toys, or it could be just papers. So students can have letter bags, and you might dictate a word. For example, you dictate cat, and I need to find the letters in my bag to put the word together. Then you dictate the next one, the next one. Why this is a good idea? First of all, it's fun, it's memorable, and it's not spelling is not writing. We need spelling for writing. Writing is a different activity. So you can use this exact thing for spelling. And yeah, spelling gym and spelling bee, meaning that you can have competitions, or if it's a gym, students can just work in pairs, tell each other words and spell them. Or spell them with a time limit, or yeah, spelling bee. This competition when students have time limit and have to spell the words. Sorry, have to spell the words. Uh, excuse me. Yeah, have to spell the words right away from the memory, and it can be a fun game. Substitution game, this is for more advanced students. For example, you give a very simple common word like you, and you ask to find where else we can see this pattern. OU. We have you, then we have cloud, should, and students can think of all the words that have this combination and see how differently it might work in different words. Or GH, and then students also find it in different words. For example, ghost would be different from fight, sight, tight, and so on. And also notice the pattern, how this letter combination works in different words. What would be the exception? What would be the rule? The pattern. And they can discover it on their own in a very simple game. Okay, and going to vocabulary games and activities. So, first vocabulary game I will share with you would be classroom objects and space travel. Before we go, I will check what's going on in the chat. I have 60 messages unread. Okay. People are saying thank you. I hope it's for the activity, not because they are leaving. Okay. All right. If something if you have questions, we will have some 5 minutes, I guess 2 minutes for the questions. We are not finishing, so uh, finally, we're getting to vocabulary games and activities, the most important part of this webinar. And yeah, the first one would be classroom objects space travel. Why space travel? Because there is a lot of preparation. No, because students are mysterious about, yeah, they're quiet about their actions, and you can just organize it into a kind of space travel idea. But yeah, what the task is? The task is to put some object, some classroom object on the desk. You ask students to put something on their desks, and stand up next to the desk. Uh, so easy as of now. Then you have your own bag, mm, and this is a bag not with the letters but with the words. These words can be either prepared by students or made by you in advance. For example, if you had a warm-up activity, write down all the classroom object words on separate pieces of paper, one word on one paper. They write it down, and then you put everything in a bag. And then you pull stripe by stripe or paper by paper, piece of paper by piece of paper, and you read them out. For example, red pencil. Those who have red pencil, sit down. Those who don't have this red pencil as their object on the table, they just stand. Teddy bear, green ruler, green apple, banana, blue notebook, and then finally red apple. So this student sits down. And those students who put something on their table and you didn't read it, it's not in the list of classroom objects. If they know how to say it in English or how to spell it in English, they have a bonus, for example, yeah, and they sit down. Um, so this is one of the revision games for classroom objects, and could be really fun. And advanced, this is the advanced version, and a simple version would be just pencil, bear, ruler, apple. Yeah, so everybody sits down. Count and spell. Count and spell would be quite an advanced game. This is something we do when students already know all the words from the topic and we just need to revise. And we do that before or at the end of the lesson with some different topic. We just suggest a game. It will take you like 7 minutes to play this game a little bit, and you can play it, for example, once a week to revise some of the topics. For example, I choose category food. Name 3 food words, but it might be very easy for students to do this when they know all the words. So you add a challenge. It can only be 4-letter words. Or yes, 4-letter words. So it would be beans, peas. Maybe someone can type in the chat. Oh, people are typing goodbye. That's very nice. We are still working. Cake, thank you. Fish, tea, tea. This is 3 words. Cake, meat, lime, plum, corn. Oh, thank you. There's so many 4-letter words. You see? This is wonderful. Another challenge, change the category. So we go from food to name 3 or add 1 more letter. +1 would be apple. +2 would be banana. And we can play this game until it ends. Now, the next game, we have 2 games left. Advert drama. So you have, this is for more advanced students. You can have this grid on the board. Noun, verb, activity or object, adverb or adjective. And you can have a pile of different cards. Students look at the card and, for example, I have a cat. Then I take a verb card, makes. Then I take as a student, and I don't show it to anyone. I just take, we have 4 piles, and I take one card from a pile. This could be just pieces of paper. Okay, a cat makes, then I take another one. The room, dirty. Okay, so I have this, I'm hiding it from everyone, and I have to show the whole sentence, mime the whole sentence. So this is a simple charade game, but why is it cool? Because it teaches not only like recycles the vocabulary, but mostly it recycles grammar, and you can adjust it to any topic you wish, together with some activities. Yeah, it could be sports, it could be if your activity is adjective, I'm sorry for this misprint, adjectives or adverbs, depending on you, but this is the idea of this game. And again, you can ask students to write down the words from the topic that you need to revise and put them here. For example, these would be adverbs, and you work with that. Cards, posters, and digital games. There are lots of posters and flashcards for Kids Box and Superminds books. This is, for example, a digital game for Superminds book. And yeah, I will just remind you that the most important part of teaching new vocabulary is that first you teach the meaning. And you can find more in the teacher's books for Kids Box New Generation. This is a wonderful 7-level course for primary students. And Super Minds, also 7-level course for primary students from Cambridge University Press, with a huge set of digital resources for teacher, for student, and so on. And again, to receive the presentation, you tag us on our Facebook page. You can choose you can choose the activity you liked. Some of the activities are also described on our Facebook page. All of them are either listening or speaking or vocabulary activities, which are mostly done to work with creativity and critical thinking. And this is the article which you will also find on our Facebook page. Here is the name, Cambridge English Ukraine. And here is the article, Top 3 Activities to Revise Vocabulary with Primary Students. These would be different activities, the ones you